Hello friends, I am Thomas George, a family nurse practitioner and doctor of nursing practice and obesity expert. And today we are at Backbone Food Farm. We're out in the hills listening to the birds, and with all this fresh produce, today we literally are going to do farm to table. This is the locavore on steroids. We're going to take this freshly produced produce, picked today to the table, Ratatouille style. Ratatouille is a quintessential vegetable stew from the Mediterranean. Think of the rim from Barcelona, Spain, all the way over to Naples, Italy. Along the coast, you'll find some variation of eggplant, zucchini, onions, olive oil, garlic, tomatoes, all in this delicious stew. And the fun thing is it stores well and tastes better the next day. So you can serve this with a crusty bread, with grilled fish, or today, farinata, or in the south of France, soca. This is a bread or a pancake, depending on your preference, that's made out of chickpea flour, 100% gluten-free, good source of fiber and protein, and an interesting take on a legume, a ground garbanzo bean. It's a chickpea. We grind it up into a flour and make it into this delicious bread. Today we'll go through the steps of how to make a ratatouille, but look at this. These phytonutrients are going to go from the field to the table and to your plate, and this is exciting. So stay tuned and we'll show you ratatouille in a nutshell. Whether you call it farinata, the Italian version, or soca, the French version, it's the same thing. Ground chickpeas, also known as garbanzo beans, into a flour. In this recipe, to make this farinata, we took 1.5 cups of ground garbanzo bean flour to 2 cups lukewarm water, and we mix that together and let it sit. You can let it sit for up to 12 hours. Overnight is nice. You want to make it to be the consistency a little bit thicker than like heavy cream. And then once it's set up, you add to that about 3 tablespoons of good quality olive oil and about a 1/2 tablespoon of salt. You whisk that all together. In a skillet, what I did was took some olive oil, about a teaspoon or 2, sauteed some onions until they were caramelized, and when this pan was good and hot, I made sure my oven was preheat to 500 degrees. That's right, 500 degrees. We want this hot skillet to take the batter of the chickpea flour. You mix it right in with the onions and put it into a hot oven, and it takes about 15 minutes to 20 minutes. And what ends up happening is you get this delicious, looks like a pancake, but look at how that comes right out. You can use this as a bread, you could use this as a pizza base, but it's best served warm. In the streets of South France or in northern Italy, bikes come by and it's served hot, and they're yelling out, hot farinata, hot soca, and sometimes it has fresh rosemary, onions, garlic, just like this. When it's warm, you just cut it into pieces and put it in your mouth. It's delicious, gluten-free, high fiber, and good protein, anywhere from 6 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Take a look at that. Caramelized onions, chickpeas, delicious. This is going to go alongside our ratatouille today. Now for protein, we think that we should have about 3/4 to 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. I know, you have to do math, but why is protein important? It's what helps us build lean muscle mass and preserve it, especially when we're losing weight. Why would we lose weight? Well, as an obesity expert, I'm here to tell you, I'm not here to help you lose weight. Yeah, you heard me. I'm not here to help you lose weight. I'm here to help you fight the underlying causes for you gaining weight. If we address the fundamental causes for why your body's storing extra energy, the weight will happen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened to me when I only lost 3.4 pounds. Disappointed? Oh, you betcha. Until I looked at my body composition analysis and found out I lost 8 pounds of body fat and gained 2.5 pounds of muscle. But more on that later. Farinata, a delicious Mediterranean treat to go with our ratatouille. Okay, to start our ratatouille, it begins with making a fresh tomato sauce. And by fresh, I mean we are chopping tomatoes, skins, seeds, everything but the stems, and they're going to get sauteed. But first we're going to take some olive oil, onions, garlic, saute those down until they're soft. We'll add the tomatoes and we'll start cooking until the liquid from the tomatoes reduces. We're not going to add any liquid to this except for perhaps a splash of wine, but that's up to you whether you want to do it or not. While we're prepping the tomatoes, I'm also going to prep some of these small heirloom cherries, and we're going to make a Caprese salad. Caprese means the Isle of Capri, and that's an island off of Italy. And this is a classic salad of tomatoes, fresh mozzarella cheese, some basil, and a good quality olive oil and balsamic vinegar. So I will prep all those up and show you what it looks like, but this is simple, delightful summer food. I don't know how to speak French, but they have a word for the joy of living, and they also have the art of living. And in the Mediterranean circle that we've talked about, the art of living means eating fresh, eating local, eating when in season. Ratatouille is this quintessential dish that's based on a tomato sauce and stewing these vegetables like zucchini, peppers, and the eggplant. As it all comes together, the first tasting is fresh and vibrant, and the next day it's luxuriant as all the flavors permeate. I like to make this in a big batch so that I can freeze some, so on a cold winter night I can pull it out and be reminded of summer. Let's get started. So these are fresh onions, and every time I start with fresh onions, I showed one way of slicing them the last time we were here. I'm going to take this root side off and just spare the part that's sticking into the dirt. Leave that part on, and then the top, we just get a little bit of that tougher part. I'm going to cut this in half. Now this time, I'm going to do something a little different than the last time. This is a different technique of cutting onions, but what I want to do is make sure some of this area here that's dried out is tough. So I'm just going to remove that because I don't want to have something tough and chewy inside here, but I'm going to make a series of parallel cuts on my onion that is about a 1/4 inch. And then, this is another tough piece, we'll get that here in the garbage. Then I'm going to come right back, and this is going to make my 1/4 inch dice. I'm watching my moving table here, and I want to make sure that I don't have my pot slide off, because over here I'm heating up some olive oil. And this is where we're going to start sauteing these onions. This is about a medium to medium high heat. I don't want to caramelize these onions, but what I do want to have happen is have these onions become soft and translucent. That's when I'll know they're getting ready to add the garlic. And we'll let our garlic get fragrant, and then once the garlic's fragrant, after about 30 seconds to 1 minute, we'll add these chopped tomatoes. So I'm going to finish chopping the onions, and I'll come back to you when it's time for the tomatoes. Okay, I said I was going to do tomatoes, but you'll notice I'm chopping the fresh garlic. This garlic is so fresh, so fragrant. I like to cut it, and this is going to be a rough but finer chop on the garlic. I like to do this first and then chop my tomatoes on top of it. I know it sounds weird, but it picks up some of that garlic flavor in your tomatoes. I want to have this garlic ready to go because it's only going to take about 30 seconds for it to get fragrant, and then we'll add our chopped tomatoes to the top of that with a little salt. The salt adds flavor, but mechanically it also pulls some of the water out of these tomatoes. Now, when you have fresh tomatoes, there are a couple parts that you don't want, and that little piece of the bottom, there's a little rough part that can be a little chewy, and then likewise on the top, you always want to look at where your stem areas are. So I just do my little fillet method and come around, and there we go, tomato ready to go. What we want to do is avoid anything that's going to be pulpy or pithy, that stuff that makes it feel fibrous. Over here, the onions are sauteing over a medium heat. You can hear that. That's a sign to me that I need to turn the heat down a little bit. I'm not trying to caramelize these onions. What I'm trying to do is get them soft to the point where they're translucent, and we're almost there. So for these tomatoes, they don't have to be pretty. In fact, we just want to do a chop. So what I'm going to do is take my tomatoes, and I'm going to do the same thing as the onion. I'm going to come across the top, make some pieces. They're going to break down in the heat. And as they break down in the heat, I want some of the pieces to be mouthfeel of, oh, that's tomato. And the rest of it, I want it to break down into the sauce. The idea here is we don't want mushy vegetables, so we're going to cook the zucchini and the eggplant separately and add them to this sauce once we're all done. So come back and see how this sauce comes together. So you'll hear the sizzle of the onions, and I decided to do something else. Most ratatouille has bell pepper. In this case, I have a green pepper that I found in our basket, fresh from the farm, and I diced some of that up to add some flavor and base to our tomato sauce. I'll also include some pepper at the end that will saute with our zucchini and our eggplant to give a little bit of the bite of the pepper. This is more for the flavor. So we're going to cook that just like the onions, help translucent. Now I'm going to add the garlic. We have some of our friendly farmers driving through right now, and there's a fresh batch of tomatoes that they just harvested, much like these that are going to go into our sauce. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be out here at Backbone Farm. This is literally farm to table. It was picked, washed, it's getting cooked, and we're going to eat it right here on the porch. So the secret to this sauce, all fresh, in the pot, skins and seeds and all. I know it seems like it's counterintuitive, but this is a provincial sauce. This is the south of France. That's the agrarian or farmer that's taking his fresh produce with his family and making it into something to eat that day and something to eat the next day. Ratatouille can be eaten cold. It can be eaten warm. It can be eaten on top of bread. You can eat it any way you like. It sounds like Dr. Seuss, right? Well, this is the thing. You can make this yours. Like more tomatoes? Put more tomatoes. Want more zucchini? Put more zucchini. Don't be afraid of the eggplant. This fresh and young eggplant that we're going to use, it has a thinner skin. It's not bitter at all, and it takes on a delicious flavor, and it absorbs a lot of the flavors of the garlic, the fresh basil that will go in here, and most importantly, that fresh and vibrant taste that comes from an extra virgin olive oil. Don't skimp here. Get an olive oil that's worth it. You want to get an extra virgin olive oil that's fruity, fragrant, delightful on the tongue. You should taste it, and it should taste good on bread. The other thing with that olive oil is you want to store it properly, away from the heat and away from the sun. Dark glass container or in a cabinet. In the fridge sometimes is not the best place because it'll solidify, and then it's hard to get back to liquid unless you get it back to room temperature. So I am liking the way these peppers are looking. They're not breaking down, but they're soft, they're translucent. This is where we add fresh garlic. This garlic is so fresh, so fragrant. We'll get it right in there. The heat is going to release some of the compounds that make it so delicious. One of them is allicin. When you chop your garlic and leave it on your surface to get with the air, the allicin forms, and it makes it increasingly better for you as far as releasing those compounds that are good for you. I wish you could smell this. Oh my. I have the fresh air of the farm along with these sauteing onions, garlic, and pepper. That right there I could eat, but now we'll add those tomatoes because the garlic is stirred in, it's fragrant, and these tomatoes are going to release their juice right into that pan. We'll add a little bit of salt, we'll turn the heat down, and we're gonna let this simmer. We're gonna let it simmer until it breaks down into something around like a marsala sauce, something about that thick, but we wanna get some of the water cooked out of it. And then I will add a splash of wine. That's one of my favorites. There are things you can do. Wine is not a necessity. I think it adds a little bit of flavor, so I chose a wine from the south of France that has a little bit of the Syrah grape and the Grenache grape, grown in the same terroir, the dirt of this vegetables of Provence. I think it adds just a delightful flavor. Herbs, you can add thyme, you can add basil. I think that either one of them goes well, along with a little bit of oregano. I'm not going to add those until later though, because I want the freshness to come out with the dish, and I'll add some fresh herb on top when I serve this. So these tomatoes are going to be transformed into the base of our ratatouille. So our tomato sauce is simmering. In fact, if you look, you can see that it's reduced now by almost half. I want it to go a little bit more. I want it to be a little less watery, and I want some of those constituent vegetables to break down a little bit. So we're going to leave this on a medium heat to simmer. I have a red wine, and the constituent grapes are from the south of France, particularly the Grenache and the Syrah grape. Ratatouille is a dish that could pair with any wine. And now, let me be fair. I'm not endorsing alcohol in this dish. If you don't want it, you don't need it. It's not necessary. But a common conversation that comes up with many people is wine good for me? The question is, it depends. Too much of anything really isn't, but wine in moderation has mixed studies that suggest that in moderation, which would be about a drink a day no more than 3 or 4 times a week, can have some benefits. Now, this is not an endorsement to go out and start drinking. What I am saying is things like wine have a place in our health and also in religious ceremonies and celebrations. So with all things, in moderation. But if this is something you don't want to do, it's not a showstopper or a game stopper. You don't need it. Add some other flavors like here, fresh thyme. All I'm going to do with these fresh thyme stems, I'm going to pull the top and just pull those little leaves right into my mix and pinch off that top. And those thyme leaves are going to impart some delicious flavors of the spice itself. And then we're going to do a little bit more right before the end. The stems are kind of woody, so we leave those behind. But to get the base of flavors in here, we're going to put those lovely little leaves right into the sauce. I'm also going to take some fresh parsley. I'm going to add some now and before service, and a little bit of chopped basil that we'll put in there as well. Next up, we're going to dice our vegetables and we're going to saute them separately. See you soon. The next part of this, the sauce is reduced. We tasted it. We added a little salt. It's delicious. Now we're going to take our vegetables and we're going to cube them, and about the size of, say, a playing die. You know, the dice that you roll for games. That's the size we're going for. This baby eggplant has a very thin skin, so I'm going to leave them on. Why? Because in here have the same flavonoids and color-related pigments that bring not only flavor, but nutrition for our body. Same colors that are in here are the ones found in blueberries and berries, and so we don't want to miss out on that. Same reason why the tomato skins are actually in there. These cooked tomatoes will add something called lycopene, which is really good for us. These are going to get sauteed uniquely. The eggplant will get sauteed and taken off. The zucchini will get sauteed and taken off. And then the zucchini. And then what we'll do is add them back to that delicious sauce, bring all the flavors together for a bit, and serve it with some crusty French bread and maybe a glass of wine or water, whatever your preference. We'll see you soon. So my friends, eggplant. Some of you might scrunch up your nose and say, ew, eggplant. Well, eggplant's actually pretty delicious. It's a meatier vegetable. It takes on a lot of flavor. In this case, in this pot here, I have it with some olive oil, salt, and a little bit of black pepper. I want it to retain a little bit of the chew or that texture. So what I'm doing is getting individual color, which you can see I've browned some of those edges. And once they're caramelized, I'm going to take this off the heat and I'm going to put it in a bowl. I'm going to add some olive oil and I'm going to saute this lovely zucchini. Now I've made some playful shapes. I've got squares, I've got rounds, I've got some smaller pieces, and I've got some bigger pieces. The reason being is the bigger pieces will keep the texture, the smaller pieces will kind of melt into this creamy, silky texture of the sauce, which will give you contrast of, well, contrast. You want to have a little bit of bite and a little bit of soft. We should have a little bit of sweet, we should have a little bit of bitter, we should have a little bit of sour, and a little bit of that unctuous umami that we talk about, that savory flavor. We're developing some of that savory flavor by getting those little crispy notes on our vegetables. So we'll finish the eggplant, then we'll do the zucchini, finish with the pepper, and then it all goes back in that delightful sauce for a little bit of a simmer. I like eating it fresh. That's when all these flavors will rise to the top, and then I let it to sit by the side, and the next day I will actually eat it at room temperature or even cold. You can use it like a bruschetta on top of grilled bread. You can put it on top of salad. You can eat it by itself. Very, very convenient. So make a big batch. The time is worth the investment because you'll have something that's nutritious and delicious throughout the week. See you when this all comes together. So this is the moment I've been waiting for. I've got all these lovely sauteed vegetables. Now, remember, I don't want these to be soft. I want them to be just under crisp tender or al dente, to the teeth, because they're going to cook a little bit more in the sauce. That's going to bring all the flavors together. The first serving of this, I really want people to be able to see each individual ingredient and taste it. And then with the subsequent reheating, guess what? The flavors incorporate. It's like almost a different dish on the next day. Deeper flavors and textures. What I'm saying here is you can eat this just like that with the sauce. It doesn't matter. It's not a rule that we can make our own rules with Ratatouille because it's the ingredients that make it. The number one rule though is fresh, and it doesn't get fresher than from the farm to this table. I will mix this all together and show you what it looks like, and we'll serve it up. Delicious. So I just opened the lid, and that fragrance of tomatoes and herbs and garlic and the fresh veggies that we just sauteed, I'm going to coat all that with that lovely red tomato sauce that we just made. Literally, this was in the field this morning and in our pot right now. This is farm to table at its best, and that's what Ratatouille is all about. It's about taking the freshest things in the top of their season, combining them with the best flavors with minimal alterations. This is whole food cooking. This takes things and uses them just they are without any ultra processing. There's no sugar in this dish, but it's sweet. There's no excessive salt, just enough to bring out the flavors. There's not heat in this. The peppers we use are bell peppers that have some softness to them and some sweetness. And what we can do, if you like heat, add some spicy peppers. Add some red chili flakes if you like. This is your dish. You can personalize it. You can make it your own, but most of all, you need to make it. So come on out to the Backbone Food Farm Get your fresh ingredients, and if you can't come out here, see them at the farmer's market. Every Wednesday and Saturday from 10 to 1, they, along with all of our other friends in the Garrett growers, are there with freshness that can turn from their fields into food and to your table. So take a look at me now. Look at this. I want those colors to come together. I want to be able to see the parts, but I also want it to heat up. And then as this cooks down, some of the smaller pieces will melt in, the bigger pieces will stay chunky, and you can get the different flavors. We'll put this with some crusty bread, perhaps a salad. My favorite thing with this, believe it or not, is grilled fish. That's for another time in another episode, and we'll teach you how to cook grilled fish. I'm also going to put this with that Caprese salad. I know, tomato on tomato, but why not? We have them, they're fresh. And what else goes with Caprese salad? Bread. So we made a bread out of garbanzo beans, or farinata in Italy, socca in France, whatever you call it. I call it good. So we'll put it together and see what others think. Thank you for watching. I hope you're tasting soon. When you see me next, I'll have a spoon and some food in my mouth. Well, here it is. From the coast of the Mediterranean to the mountains of Western Maryland, Ratatouille, we have the Caprese salad, and farinata, also known as socca. Inside here, take a look, and I wish you could smell. All the colors have come together. The vegetables have softened, but they've retained their shape, and the flavor is extraordinary. I can smell the garlic, the thyme, I see the basil, and we're going to top it off with some fresh herbs when we serve it. I've grilled up some bread, and we have some nice hot farinata. We'll take the cheese and the tomatoes and add olive oil or balsamic vinegar or nothing at all. We're just going to enjoy it. From the farm to the table to you. If you have any questions, be sure to leave us a comment or a question. We'll answer it. Or if you'd like to see something else featured, that's why we're here. It's about being a locavore, eating what's produced locally in season, whole foods, good for your body, good for your soul, but most of all, good when they're consumed together. So we're going to gather a crowd, and we're going to enjoy this meal. Take care, Garrett County. Until next time, we can do this together.